Should be topic number 3 is Garveyism capitalist or anti-capitalist? Do you believe that this video is revisionist in nature or that capitalist revisionist attempt to co-opt Garvey? Please provide a cogent argument for your position. Interested. This came with a link. Takes us to YouTube.
Garveyism, the philosophy of Marcus Garvey and the UNIA-ACL, was the greatest anti-imperialist philosophy of the 20th century, as well as the greatest anti-capitalist philosophy of American history and world history. When most people think of Marcus Garvey, they usually associate him with Black nationalism and Black hypercapitalism. But if one analyzes the summation of his quotes, the majority of his statements on economics were both anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. There was a brief revisionist phase of Marcus Garvey's development where he did give a rhetorical nod to a market economy in the 20s when he had just survived an assassination attempt, had lost his father, divorced his first wife, and was fearing deportation by the U.S. government. In order to reestablish his foundation, Garvey made certain alliances with the Black petty bourgeois to keep the UNIA moving forward. If you analyze the history of the UNIA and famous Black socialists associated with it, in Claude McKay, W.A. Domingo, Cyril Briggs, and Hubert Henry Harrison, who formulated the race-first ideology and was Marcus Garvey's primary jegna at Harlem's Liberty League, you will see that though this revisionist period in the early 1920s did create a split between these socialists, that didn't change the overall propulsion and direction of the Garvey ideology within time. If we analyze the Soviet Union during this same period, we will see that Lenin was instituting the new economic policy where he was creating political alliances with the kulaks to establish a united front against the imperialists. When you are engaged in struggle against an overarching oppressive system, there are times that alliances with the upper economic strata of your population are necessary in order to create a united front against the common enemy. Lenin did it, and Garvey did it. Nobody would call Lenin an imperialist, so we can't use this small period of Garvey's development to classify him as a pro-capitalist. Garvey spent the majority of his young adult life ferociously advocating for the rights and dignity of Black workers, from Colon, Panama to Harlem. He was an agitator that always galvanized and organized Black labor wherever he went. According to Dr. Tony Martin, Garvey had a better record in the labor struggle than all of the Marxists in his day combined. Garvey's message spoke to the masses of Black workers. 80% of UNIA members in North America were working-class laborers and farmers. His message of African pride and dignity gave them hope for positive transformative changes in a racist, genocidal society. He was the international continuation of intellectual giants who preceded him, like Robert Love, Edward Blyden, Martin Delany, Henry Highland Garnett, Hubert Henry Harrison, Alexander Crummell, Africanus Horton, and the list goes on. Garveyism must be understood as radical revolutionary anti-racism. In a revolution, when you are moving from one mode of production to another, there will always be vestiges of the old order in the new political economy. Just like mercantilism contains elements of feudalism before becoming capitalism, socialism has elements of capitalism before becoming communism. As a disciple of Blyden's dialectical analysis, Garvey understood these historical relationships. In the same way that socialism contains elements of surplus accumulation and extraction, surplus also existed within the confines of the UNIA command economy, but this surplus was used for the benefit of all African people as opposed to an elite capitalist minority. In Message to the People, Garvey describes 4 types of profit: national profit, racial profit, political profit, and economic profit, with each being defined as surplus that will benefit the UNIA aim of Black improvement and anti-racism. Garvey even identified a universal classification of profit called human profit, defined as the addition of more members into the UNIA to strengthen the labor force. Similar to how Marx discussed the science behind the organic composition and accumulation of capital in social formations, Garvey discussed the science behind the usage of surplus to facilitate the evolution of an oppressed African people in a racist society. Under Garvey's direction, this surplus was used for the local, national, and international UNIA-ACL directives against racial imperialism. Marcus Garvey stated that the Russian Revolution against the feudalist czars was a blessing for humanity. The UNIA was an African analog to the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party that became the Bolsheviks. It was ran like a provisional government, with horizontal democratically operated auxiliary cooperatives. As opposed to running on a strict profit motive, the UNIA promoted collective uplift through the imposition of price controls where no individual could own more than $1 million and no corporation could own more than $5 million. The UNIA extracted the surplus and used it to generate a trust in the form of a black common pool of resources to invest in infrastructure projects throughout the African world. Garvey wanted to modernize the African mode of production and establish a society based upon African values. The imperialist elite always hated Garvey. They hated him in Jamaica, they hated him in the US, and they hated him in the European colonial settler states of Africa. They worked hard to prevent Garvey from reaching Africa and even instituted a capital punishment against Africans who dared to read the Negro world out in public. The students of Garvey in Lumumba in Congo, Njoma of Namibia, Nkrumah of Ghana, Kenyatta of Kenya, etc., used elements of scientific Garveyism to invigorate African workers and traditional societies against the imperialists. They did this by building on the policy objectives of the 1929 Marcus Garvey People's Political Party in Jamaica, which laid the foundation for anti-colonial struggle in the African world. These policies included self-government and the rejection of colonialism, a minimum wage, land nationalization, public libraries, compulsory urban improvement for large profit industries, mandatory infrastructure improvement, imprisonment for capital bribery in politics, state bonds for agricultural development, home development, a ban on capitalist gentrification, universal education, universal healthcare, universal electricity, and union finance campaigns. In summation, it is clear that Marcus Garvey had immense anti-capitalist sentiments and was a legendary revolutionary who sought to use the UNIA provisional government to transition African families from exploitation under imperialism to liberation in an African economic democracy.
To me, there is some revisionist stuff going on there. Particularly, it's some propaganda being pushed here. The truth of the matter is, by his works, more so than by his sayings, but Garvey was capitalist. What Garvey was against was capitalist imperialism, which is what they talk about his imperialist views, but they don't connect it quite right to me. But he was a capitalist. You look at because Garvey realized that the best bet for black folks is to play the game. The best bet was to get into the game. And Garvey, he didn't trust the communist socialist types. He didn't trust them because he understood it was just going to be a bunch of crazy men, white men, who were controlling your reality again. Right? So the thing that, if you get happy to hear someone say Garvey was capitalist, the thing that shouldn't make you so happy, and I imagine Buana wouldn't be too happy with this, is Garvey believed in caps. He believed in cutoffs. Like, you're not going to just be out here hoarding resources at other people's expense. So he believed that, in fact, that's why he and Booker T kind of diverged. He believed Booker was about being an entrepreneur and this, that, and the other, but Garvey recognized the problem with that model is that people start to put profits over their own people. So he never was for that type of capitalism, but he understood you have to work within that system. Like, that was your best bet. You have to work within that system, try to raise capital to fund the things that you want to see in your communities. He even talked about the fact that, like in America, they take your taxes and put it to whatever the hell they feel to put it to that has nothing to do with you. And if those taxes could have been kept by the people and organized and utilized together, you could have created different institutions, in short, the things that you need. The things that you need, right? But I will step off my talk box I see Jose disagrees. That's fine. He says definitely not a capitalist. That's fine. But I look at your deeds. I look at your works. You know. Let's go to Tanzan. Tanzan, what say you?
Oh wow, I'm the least knowledgeable in this. I think that for him, he wanted what worked for for the people, and if it was capitalism, socialism, I don't know whether he was so caught up in the definitions. If you grew up in a socialist country or environment, I think most of your terms are going to be in that way. But I think that for him, it's whatever what worked for the people. If for me, if you have to use one or the other, and you don't want to change your environment, I think for him, he wanted to leave and go and start, start the country. Create a country in his own values where everyone was taken care of. So I don't think it would be strict capitalist, because that would be like you said, simply for profiteering. And I don't know whether it would be strict socialism, because there are some aspects of that where of where the state owns. I think that's just like state capitalism. But I think that he wouldn't have been opposed to one or the other on the basis of simply policy. It would be what works best for the people. So, yeah, I think I would let me hear on other people first before I say this, because I really don't know. He did. I know he started a lot of businesses. He had he had groups. He collected money. His ultimate ambition was to build the ship. So